Yeah, yo, what's up?
Yo, what's up?
All
Man, I
right.
always catch myself freestyling on that beat. It's so fresh.
Mm, yeah. We have a one person in class for sure who writes music.
Mm-hmm.
People actually, but one definitely who's really into music, and I keep meaning to reach out to this guy and ask him to, write a couple tunes for us, man, that we can use.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
play his music.
Do you know what kind of music it is, or you just know that
I
he
have
likes
a.
music?
I'm not sure. I think it's a little hard. I think it's not quite metal, but something like prog rock.
Got
And
it.
I don't know why I think that, but anyway, we'll give it.
Yeah. Yeah. I experimented a little bit with some rock in the studio.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
Uh,
Well,
so
if
I
you
might
have
have to
anything,
collab with them.
all right. Well, if you have anything for us, we can use it. We just need stuff that's not copyrighted and not up on YouTube. So
Wait, really? Because I have some songs I could send you.
I'll talk to Jeff about it, man. We'll
All right,
bring
bet.
your stuff up. Hey, so let's see. Um, you had a question from yesterday's class. You had something that someone said
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
is kind of interesting on the
Yeah, yeah,
climate.
yeah. So, it's grab it real quick. It's on class 13, and it says, "Yep, you have it, Jeff." Um, it's not that one. It's the talking about. So slide 35. Yep, right there.
Mm,
So it says, you got it. Talking about complex scientific theories on a social level is problematic. If you catastrophize climate change, you assume to know humanity's inability to change and adjust to changes.
mhm.
You're contributing to significant anxiety among young people. It is possibly impacting young people's decision to reproduce. Lower
Y-
reproduction rates can have bigger impacts on humanity than climate change.
Yeah, yeah. This is such a really nice comment. Uh,
So,
I
Sam, real quick,
Yeah.
what could you just say, like, when I read that back, what are you essentially hearing from that before you respond to it? What are you hearing from that comment?
What I'm hearing is we don't know what the future has in store. We don't know how we don't know what we don't first off we just don't know what the future is. So let me start there. We don't know whether we'll be able to adjust and change and how quickly we can adjust and change and redirect. We don't. We definitely know that young people. We all feel anxiety about this, and young people definitely feel anxiety. Although probably we all feel it, right? Young people do. So it's like how do we talk about it in a way that can say that that can open up a different kind of conversation? All right. So how's that? Does that make sense?
Yep, yep, yep. So you're saying that, like, so you're responding to the part where, like, you're projecting this anxiety onto the students, and it
Yeah.
sounds like your response is, well, one, there already is anxiety that exists. Everybody's
Yeah.
feeling it, along with the young students, and so
Yeah.
now it's like, what's the approach to talking about it? How do we talk about it effectively? Is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that that's really the biggest thing, right? I will say that I have lots of different conversations about this issue. So that's the thing about the Social 19 class, right? Um, one day or one semester I'll go in and I'll take a certain approach, and another semester I'll take a different approach. Um,
Right.
so that's the most difficult thing, right? If you're in my
Mhm.
shoes, if you're in my shoes, you know, it's like year after year after year, 60 classes. Um, I'm trying different things out, talking in lots of different ways. So, the students can take the class twice in a row, and they're going to hear different things, and they're going to hear me address maybe certain topics. Maybe say like next semester, I may not talk about climate, right? But
Right.
they'll hear me take a really different approach or facilitate a different kind of conversation, right? So
Right.
I think yesterday I just said, I had this idea. Listen, one of the things that I experience among young people is just an exceptional amount of denial about it, which I understand. You know, I think I was kind of saying that yesterday. Of course you're in denial. Of course you're not. Nobody's selfish, right? Someone after class said, like, the problem is we're just really selfish. I'm like, no, you're not selfish. You're just living life. You're doing what I do. You're doing what everybody does. You're trying to figure out how to make decisions to sustain yourself, and also,
Right.
not hurt other people and that kind of thing, right? So, but what I find in talking to young people is just a level of denial that, on average, that is like way over the top, like, hey, this isn't going to affect me at all, right? So, for example, right now, this is gonna be like really,
I was gonna ask. Yep.
and I'm like, yo, no. Sorry. Sometimes I have to. It's like, to get past that, you got to kind of grab people by the collar and be like, no, you just shake them. No, this is going to affect you. I mean, you're only 20 years old. Trust me. This is like, you're not even going to get halfway through life, and this is going to impact you. It's already impacted.
Right.
So,
Right.
So
And
one of the reasons yesterday I just took this really hardcore thing on it is to say, no, I'm not going to let you be in that level of denial. Like, I'm not. So we can now find a way to get into to make sense of it and figure out what we're going to do. But I'm going to shake you out of that denial. And that was just yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, I've never really done that before in that kind of way.
Yeah. What did you notice a difference in how students were receiving this message in comparison to previous approaches?
Yeah, I will say, I took a couple laps around the room. I will say people were far more attentive yesterday. Like, they were, because I was speaking more. Lori's been telling me, hey, man, you got to talk a little more. Like, they need to hear from you. They need to hear some of your thoughts.
Right.
And I said, okay, all right, I will. So I spoke more, I gave way more of myself than I would on this issue, but in a way, it's not even myself. I'm not sure what I think about the issue. I just I just walked down a certain path. And
what was that path, would you say? But go ahead.
Yeah, no, the path is just like, hey, look, and this appears to the best of my research abilities. Maybe not the best of, because I haven't spent that much time reading, really looking into this. Although I will say, when I encounter someone who is very thoughtful about talking about how the climate scientists have got this all wrong, I go down the rabbit hole. I just go right in. I'm like, all right, here we go. Because I'm looking for someone to explain it to me. But I will say that I've had conversations with 3 different top climate scientists in the world, where I'm like, okay, look, man, walk me through. Like, a guy who's world renowned for sea level rise. This is his part of it. Like, it's just sea level rise. And people misunderstand science, like, people will think like, oh, these scientists, they're getting rich off of this. It's like, no, they're not getting rich off of it.
People think that. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, people think they get all this, millions and millions of dollars worth of grant money if they're willing. But if they study it in a certain way and then come back with conclusions that the left pro climate change cabal wants to promote, right? With that message, like, we have climate change and we need to, I don't know, government control over the world, or whatever the case is. I don't know. So people have an idea that the scientists get rich over that. over this kind of thing through the research. And that's not how science works. That's not how this is working. Anybody who could realistically and thoughtfully and in a very smart way undermine all of these things that these scientists the people are doing, the climate science people, right? If you could do that, if you could just demonstrate with data that they don't get it, it's an explosion in the world of science, and nobody's going to shut that down. People are going to
demonstrate with data that they don't get it.
Yeah, the climate scientists are wrong. They're missing something. Like, look, you're going to see this. Watch, right? There's this punctuated equilibrium thing where it's like going up and then it's going to punctuate, but then it's going to level off here. And here's the reason it's going to level off, right? Oh, okay. But these people have just an immense amount of integrity, and they want to get it right, man. I mean, there are certain blinders that we all put on in the world of science. Like we can't step out of these blinders. I mean, that's absolutely true, but the blinders are relative, man. They're just relative. And so,
the blinders as in like ignoring parts of science, like ignoring certain facts,
science and the scientific perspective. Yeah. So me as a sociologist, right? There are certain things that are just kind of a given as a sociologist that we really come to understand. And we come to accept a certain kind of layerings of causality, because it's all about causality, right? We want to understand how one variable affects another variable, right? If you have higher education, we say higher income. They just go together, right? And then, but that's not really interesting stuff, right? It's not one variable; it's multivariate stuff. So it's like education, gender, class, parents' occupation, and your income kind of thing, whatever it is. I mean, then start throwing in a dozen other variables, right? And if you can show correlation, if you can go beyond correlation and actually find some level of causality, because in the end, it's all correlation, right? But if you can find it, it's like, okay. So anyway, there's a certain amount of correlation in the world of social science that we just accept as causality, and it's just is. And there's probably certain blinders to that, right? Sometimes. And so
these are dominant narratives.
Yeah, it's a narrative. Yep. And so that's why it's hard. It's hard. You gotta work really, really hard to get out of that. Like, for example, the police, are a violent institution. That's propped up by the powerful state actors to oppress or keep the population in control, whatever. I mean, there's just a given, like, police, it's just a violent thing. It's like, well, hang on a second. What if we actually question that? Or like gun control is going to save lives? People on certain social scientists, of course, gun control is going to save lives. My God, you have less guns on the street, less people are going to die. I mean, it's basic, right? But if you take a step back and say, well, hang on a second, let me really think this through. And you really work to think it through, and you take a different approach to it, and you work it, and and that's what you want to do. That's the best kind of science. Okay, so these climate scientists are, this guy that's been studying sea level, who I had this conversation with. I just tracked him down. I said, I need to talk to you, right? You're the expert on sea level, right? Like, I need to talk to you. Tell me how it works. Why is sea level going to rise? What it is like, walk me through some of this stuff. And such a really nice, thoughtful person. And just wants the best, wants to get to the truth, wants to get to it. His kids, his grandkids, he wants to get to the truth, so
he's not there for the reasons that those think that researchers are there for, like for the money or to support political agenda or
he's probably drives a Buick. You know what I mean? It's what it is. And so I think a lot of people outside of the academy, they don't really necessarily, they don't get that. They don't, people will not see that.
Outside the academy? What's
Yeah, outside of the university, right? Outside of all this research stuff that's going on. Like you can't, if you're not in it and you're not talking to people and you're not, really listening to how much people are wrestling with these kinds of questions. Like, and the things that seem, no, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, when you say outside of the academy, it made me think about how things become transformed into like conspiracy.
Exactly. So here, for example, after class yesterday, one of my students came down and he said, listen, you had that slide up about all these organizations that are saying like, yeah, climate change is real. It's happening, one thing after another. And, one's like the CIA. He's like, why should we think the CIA isn't fomenting all this unrest, uncertainty, anxiety, and unrest with people? And they're doing that so that the ruling class, this ruling cabal, the elites, whoever that is, well, it's the people in power, can just maintain their power. Why wouldn't we think that? And I said, well, because the best way to destabilize a society, I said, here's one for you. The best way to destabilize a society would be anxiety and fear. You know what I mean? And the elites don't want that. They want to pacify people. So they don't want people questioning and fighting back and struggling and stuff, right? It's so right there, I would be like, well, it would be the opposite. But the second thing that I said to him was like, have you ever talked to anybody in the CIA? He's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not, this isn't to say that therefore I know more, but I have talked to a lot of people, right? Like, it's like, I'm just not seeing that's not necessarily how that's working at that level, right? Like, from my perspective, right? I don't know. I don't have the answer. There's a lot of dark stuff that happens behind the scenes, but that I don't know about. But the point being, it's easy to go to some like conspiracy thing, and then you have a conspiracy about climate scientists. Like, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? And so, or that there are all these new businesses, all this money that's being made selling all of this green technology. And, it's like, well, yeah, of course there is, right? Like, that's the nature of it, right? Our rivers, if we didn't have the EPA, Nixon started the EPA back in, 1971, the Environmental Protection Agency, right?
Okay.
When Nixon started the EPA, what happened was, the story behind that is that somebody who was a very wealthy multi-millionaire, this is backing, like the late 60s, early 70s, right?
Okay.
This really wealthy multi-millionaire from the Pacific Northwest was just really just sickened by seeing clear-cut logging and rivers being destroyed. And, he was an outdoors person. He hunted, he fished, he was really into fly fishing, and Nixon apparently was into fishing, right? So he was able to, he knew somehow Nixon from the West Coast. And so at some point in time, he was able to sort of get Nixon to go on a trip with him. And he took him up. They flew out to the Pacific Northwest, and they went into the backcountry, and he just showed him stuff, right? He just showed him the beauty, right? And then he said, no, I'm going to show you some things. And he took him to a polluted river that was being polluted by paper mills and lumber yards. And then he took him to some clear-cut lumber, hundreds of acres of clear-cut. And he showed him all of that. And he said, look, this is where we're headed. We need to protect this beautiful land, man, this country. And Nixon was from he was from Orange County, California, man. This guy, I mean, that's where I don't think he was born there, but Nixon was not an outdoorsy kind of person, I'm sure when he went out hiking in the woods, he wore the same shoes that he wore when when he was at his own wedding or whatever. I don't
Right, at the office.
know. At the office. So the point being,
Yeah.
you know, that's how like just stuff happens, you know, boom, you know, and now we got the
Exposure.
EPA. Yeah. And if we didn't have the EPA, this like this the level of pollution and oh my God, if we didn't have all the technologies that came about to just protect us from all that just horrific pollution, everything that was headed our way by the early 70s, right? Well,
Right.
so it's amazing. We invested in all that. Well, now we're investing in new technologies, you know, and so like one day we'll be, you know, when I drive behind a big dump truck in town, which I was 2 days ago, and you know, they're spewing smoke, this black, ugly smoke out everywhere. And I'm like, well, we won't have that in 10 years. That'll never happen. You know, so like, okay, that's because of new technology. So it's not a no.
Right.
Nixon was a
That's
Quaker,
interesting.
by the way, Bob the artist. Nixon was a Quaker. I don't know where, look up where he was actually born. I don't think he was from Pennsylvania, but he was a Quaker. Yeah. You wouldn't think it would take much for him to see the beauty of that land and be like, oh my God.
Right.
Anyway, then Nixon started the EPA. I mean, it's like, okay.
Nixon was born in California.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Southern California. Not just Southern California, but Orange County, I think. Yeah.
And so for Nixon, it was, what's up?
No, go ahead. But okay, go back to, let's go. We've never responded to this question, actually. All right. So
we do this every time. I'm so entertained by it. I like it.
So my students, it's easy for them to be in denial, because why wouldn't you be in denial? I'm in denial.
Right.
I don't want to think about like my own death. Like I don't want to think about death, you know? So I think about it, but I don't think about it.
Yeah.
So I'm
Do you
gonna
need the question again?
No, I got it.
Okay.
Or they, and one way to deal with that denial is to go to some kind of conspiracy thing, you know, like whatever that is. Like, okay, they're not telling us the truth because they have a reason to not tell us the truth. Okay.
Right.
Wait, Bob the artist. Yeah, I know we don't die. You're right. Yeah, but we transition. But we transition, and so I'm afraid of my own transition, and I don't know why I would be, because everything in me believes that the transition is is utterly fascinating.
Are you talking about moving on?
No, we're talking about transitioning,
Like
dropping our
moving on.
bodies. Yeah. I think that what it is, that for me, the transition, the thing that's most difficult about it, again, I've said this many times, is because I'm a teacher. If I knew that I could transition, come back and like do a lecture on it, and just like one 75-minute class on it, and be like, hey, I just got to tell you what's going to happen when you die. And then I would just say like, okay, I got to go now. But, you know, I'd be okay with it. I'd be cool. Like, but I'm a teacher, and I know I can't come back and talk about it. I'm like, shit. You know, I mean, maybe
you got to figure that out for you.
I can't come back in this incarnation with this mind, you know. So
maybe we can do one of those the technology where they're trying to transfer consciousness into like an AI.
Maybe,
you know,
we'll be able to do that by that time. Yeah. Okay, but I could channel it. So Bob the artist, he and I talked about this, that we could channel it. Yeah, we could. I could channel myself back through somebody else, but it's not the same, you know. So it's not with this articulated ego, you know, and I mean ego just in the general sense of me, with my sense of self as Sam Richards, the professor, you know. Okay. Anyway, listen. So going back to that very first question, I was a little rough on people in a certain sense, but you know, it's an attempt to kind of just shake them a little, say like, okay, now what are you thinking? But I enjoyed the conversation students were having. They were like, they didn't seem like they were really shook up. You know, they seem like, all right, well, let me think about this. You know?
Yeah. And I guess for me, I was also thinking like, what is wrong with a little bit of anxiety? You know, like just maybe I'm like taking it in a different term, but doesn't anxiety create a little bit of like awareness?
Yeah. What
Or
are you saying? Say more about that.
I guess, like with anxiety, I like Brenton says this a lot, like he'll be like, it depends on the duration, the intensity, and there's a third one, but like
Mm.
what anxiety can be like a regulator in a way,
Yeah.
depending on its intensity and duration, and can support or incentivize like reflection or more
Yeah.
awareness or like seeking out for more things
Yeah.
instead of being like in your own echo chamber of thoughts. Anxiety can support like more
All right.
thinking,
Okay. I'll buy
I
that.
guess is what I
Yeah.
was thinking. Hmm.
I'll buy that.
Because
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I don't. So I think that I think young people would do well. First off, let's not think by any stretch that the vast majority of people in that class have
mhm,
any understanding of climate, how the climate is changing, or how much the climate is changing, other than they just
right,
hear the message: climate change. Okay,
right,
okay, there's a hurricane here, a tornado there, this, fires, drought, something like that. But it doesn't sink
mhm,
very much because most
right,
of them are not really watching the news, and they're not really saying, not really pushing things too hard.
right,
So I think that was probably the first time two, three-quarters of them probably have ever heard anyone just come in and just be like, look, man, wake up. I mean, you don't have to wake up, but I'm just going to I'm going to show you something here. And now you're going to have to deal with it. Right. And,
mhm,
or you get to deal with it because, in part, it's like, look, you're going to have to, you really got to dig in and fix this. Right. And there are lots and lots of students they study engineering, or they study urban planning, or whatever it is they study because they were thinking about the future of the planet and
right,
geosciences, right? They're really thinking
mhm,
about this. So
right,
petroleum engineering, they're in petroleum engineering, not to just extract oil out of the ground and make money off it, sell it and burn it and make money off it. They're in it because they want to come up with better ways, more efficient ways, less polluting ways of doing it, of burning oil, like all this
right,
kind of stuff. So
right,
like that's because they're thinking about climate stuff, and they go into their jobs pushing a kind of a narrative that uh, it that is an important narrative to have. And so some of them are absolutely doing that, and they're doing that because they are concerned. And
right,
so like, okay, I mean, they tell me that, but I'm still going to say that three-quarters of them are not doing that. They're just living.
right.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. But you spoke more, but you didn't. Did you still get a lot of responses, or were most of them? I'm just curious. What?
The students, the 4 volunteers we had, just trying to make sense of things,
Mhm,
And it was pretty clear
mhm,
by talking to them that they really are not, they're thinking about it, but not with, not, they weren't able to dig in, which is exactly what I would expect and where they should be. They're 20, they're young people, man. Like, whatever. You're not the person. Anyway,
right,
my final response then to that very first comment that Jeff put up is that, yeah, I generally don't like to promote anxiety, but yesterday I just took that approach. It's like, all right, let's see what happens here. Let's
yeah,
go.
yeah.
Well, well,
We can kind of an abrupt transition. I can bring up one of the other comments.
yeah. Why don't you do
It's
that?
more of a it's more of a question. But it says, what are the costs for humanity to be united from the perspective of sociological science? What has the global condition for humanity been since the PRC entered the WTO? What does it
Hmm.
reflect on the WHO's performance in recent history. Maybe Jeff can. It's on their slide. Yep, 34. You got it.
Huh. Oh man, my God, that's a like that's a like a really I got to think about that. Yeah.
I'm not even. I also need to think about it, but I won't have any.
Yeah.
response.
Yeah. Man.
What does he mean by
Yeah,
the
you got to keep that up there.
PRC and
To
WT?
be united. What's the cost to be united? Okay. Oh, this is actually okay. That's like okay. I think I'm getting. This is actually a really cool question. All right. So you want to, when we first established, going back to the early 20th century, you established the League of Nations, so on, right? And then ultimately the United Nations, and then the, things like the World Health Organization, WHO, the World Trade Organization. I mean, just one after another, right? The World Bank. I mean, all of these things, right? But really starting in a way with the League of Nations, right? Mm-hmm. When you do that and you try to bring all these countries together under some kind of an umbrella, there's going to be a cost to it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this is actually a really brilliant question. It's way above my pay grade, but I'll take a shot at it because it's such a cool question. Yeah. So you got these autonomous nation states out in the world, right? And they all connect in different ways, right? The European states, or the African states, or the Latin American states, or Asia, this kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. And the ways that they're connecting. Do you mind if I continue to just stop you?
Yeah, no, keep doing that. Yeah, keep doing that. Okay. Yeah. Well, they're going to be connected, but the propinquity, right? When they have contiguous borders and this kind of thing, they're gonna establish some kind of trade pacts, right? Because you're going to do that necessarily, and it might be unilateral. Is it unilateral? One country, one country to another country, but you're going to have these kind of trade pacts, and ultimately you're going to get different trade pacts.
And trade pacts they're just agreements.
Yeah, just agreements for how we're going to operate. Look, when you're moving stuff across borders, you need it takes a lot. Like, think about everything that comes across the border between Mexico and the United States, or Canada and the United States. Everything's got to be tracked, man. You got a truck's coming across, it's got a bill of lading, and you got to know what's in that truck, and you got to know where it's going and who it's going to. I mean, inside the U.S. it's different, but this is cross national, right? So so you want to have some kind of pact there, because it's like, all right, well, you're allowed to bring this across the border or that across the border, but you can't bring these other things. And then, all sorts of stuff. It's like, you're going to have to come to some kind of agreements. Right. And if you have the borders, right, and if you're trying to really understand or track what is inside your border, all right, so that means that, but now imagine that you build that out, right? So it's not just two countries in Europe, but it's every country in Europe, right? Or all of Africa, right?
And you're speaking to unity right now, like.
Speaking
about trade in relation to unity.
It's about the unity and efficiency, right? So my mind is going. There's a certain efficiency that you gotta. You want to do this, right? Like, you don't want to make it too bureaucratic, because then it just becomes a real problem. Which is, of course, what the problem was with England, whether they're going to be inside the EU or not, right? This was the huge thing, because you have this huge problem with, especially in Northern Ireland. Laurie and I were up in Northern Ireland, when the Brits decided they were going to pull out. Well, Northern Ireland, hang on.
And that was an example you're giving an example of too bureaucratic.
Hang on a second.
Now, just to be,
Hang on, I got to respond to something. Sorry, everybody, I got to respond to this.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was also away from the keyboard for a second. We found out that Michael's grandfather is staying in Florida right now, and he's refusing to evacuate. So we're trying to find out where he is and the likelihood of the storm really hitting him.
Ah, how come he's refusing?
That's a great question, Elijah.
Dude, a lot of people are, man.
Yeah.
But, a lot of
Some-
people.
I feel really bad for people who were thinking maybe the storm is going to be a big deal because a lot of them didn't get gas in their vehicles, and now there's no gas being taken to Florida for the most part. And so people are like, well, I'll get stuck in 6 hours of traffic. And plus, Florida is huge. People forget the fact that from like Jacksonville to Miami driving, it's not like a 2 hour drive. It could be hours and hours just to get to
Yeah.
Miami. So
Yeah,
people they're just like, I'm going to run out of gas. So there's no purpose of me leaving because I'm going to die on the
Yeah.
road if I'm driving anyway.
Yeah, if you didn't
Wow.
fill up on gas already, man. And then you're going to
terrible.
go, even if you, let's say you want to just get away from the coast. Well, what's the point, man? This hurricane's just going to barrel through and hit you anyway, and it might not necessarily lose strength. Okay, so anyway,
Gosh. Wow.
so there's
You're relating Northern Ireland
efficiency,
into-
right? So going back to that question, Jeff, if you can put that question back up, it's such a really good question. Okay, so the costs are, so we decide, okay, for efficiency's sake, we're going to have these like this we're going to unite individual countries or many countries, right? All right. So, well, when you do that, you take away, you're going to have to take away some of the autonomy of certain nation states, and you're going to have to accept some things about other nation states that
Why is that?
well, because you're going to have to come to an agreement with other countries. It's that the larger, if it's a global organization like the World Trade Organization and the World Health Organization, these are like you're going to have to come to some kinds of agreements with nation states that are completely opposite of the kinds of things that you believe, right? So when the People's Republic of China, the PRC, entered the World Trade Organization, it just completely changes things because the PRC controls their economy. And like there's no free market economy there. And so now you got to blend this free market, so-called free market economy. There isn't much of a free market economy anywhere, actually, in my humble opinion, but you got to blend that with this massive economy that is controlled from the top down. And like, how do you do that? The World Trade, like, how do you manage that? Right. So you're going to have to let them get away with a lot of things that other people can't get away with. So like there are costs for that. And the costs are that you sort of break down all the rules and regulations in order to let the Chinese in. You got to like give them a lot of things that other people aren't going to get, right? A lot of leverage or leeway or whatever. And then like now you've sort of started to break down the structures that hold together your particular organization. So the World Health Organization, for example, is like, yeah, well, look, we have this virus and, the coronavirus, and, we as a world community, we've all decided we need to all come together and we need to figure out what the origin is of this. But maybe, when the PRC is not willing to give us information, or they gave us actually a fair amount of information, right? So I was speaking to so we say like, they were tight-lipped about what they knew about the origin of COVID-19. But I was speaking with a colleague of mine who's really does tons of work and from Asia, does tons of work in China on this very issue. And he's like, well, actually, we knew, and we got a fair amount of information out of China. It just doesn't make it out. You know what I mean? Like we actually knew a fair amount, so it wasn't as bad as many people make it out to be, right? But the point being, but they still
efficiency because
well, they're not going to be forthcoming, right? Well, if they're not completely 100% forthcoming, well, nobody is either. We withhold information as well, so it's not like we're giving all of our secrets away. Then you've now wasted. There's a cost for all of humanity by trying to build this larger umbrella structure where we're uniting and connecting all of these nations in all these many different layered ways, but yet we're not doing it equally across the board. And so there's a cost for that. And
Right. And that's mostly because of countries that are on a totally different page or different policy, different set
Yeah,
of rules and regulations in
yeah.
comparison to which China is one of those. So that's one of
Well,
the
that
key
was I
factors
use
there.
that as the example because
Imbalance.
that's in the question. But
Right.
there are lots of things. Maybe just like really deep poverty, man. Like for example, we say just yesterday when talking about climate. We can say, "Hey, man, this hurricane is gonna really rock. It's gonna just blast through the whole central part of Florida, right? Well, it blasted through the northeastern part of the Yucatan Peninsula, where people are living. Man, it caught the edge of that as a Category 5 earthquake. The level of destruction there, and these are very poor people, man. And the level of destruction that it must have had in doing that is it's incomprehensible for us,
Right. Right.
And so
Right.
it's like, well, we say, well, we have to take care of our own. But man, do yeah, we do. But at the same time, if we're going to be a global community, we have to look at that. We do have to consider those people, especially because God, for those of us who are not atheists, by the way, I know there's a whole crew of atheists in the chat, but those who are not atheists, God doesn't speak one language or have one particular set of customs. And God doesn't have a passport, man. So it's like God is not telling anybody, hey, you need look out for your own people first. It's like, if you're a Christian, God very clearly said, I think, well, I don't think it's true, but people who believe in the Bible, it's like God said, look out for the poorest of the poor.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, one of the answers that I'm hearing for, like, one of the answers I'm hearing for your response to what are the costs for humanity to be united is that there's like global inequity because, like,
Well,
global inequity.
you have to accept global inequity. If you're going to have umbrella organizations that unite various nations, you gotta be at some level on very similar playing field, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we're going to be in some kind of World Health Organization, and, we're going to be at the table, and Haiti's going to be at the table. It's like, well, this is like, you can't have Haiti at the table next to the United States or next to the Colombia or Argentina or Canada or Mexico and have Haiti there and like think that some kind of, and not have repercussions to that, like, so I think it's just, I think I'm just going at the sociological costs. It's such a cool question, man. That's a book. That's a whole book right
A
there.
whole book.
Yeah, I love that
Yeah,
question.
I'm trying to keep up with that with your responses. Like, what
Yeah. What else?
is there
What else do
anything
you have?
else?
Yeah, I'm just gonna let it go on that because I can't riff on it anymore. What other question do you have from class? Do you have another one
Mm-hmm.
or from the chat?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Well, I have that comment about the live chat.
Here's
Um,
Bob the artist. Well, we can actually kind of respond. Dexter, you are more than welcome to send me an email, and me, and Sam can jump in. And if you don't want me there, it could just be you and Sam can chat. But send me an email, Jeff at World in Conversation or staff at Social 19, and we'll chat right after class, after office hours. We do have the question from Bob the artist that you wanted to talk about, Sam. That was at the end of class.
Oh, yeah.
So here's this
But
question.
I do want to say Dexter's Lure Lab. I can't write that book, man. That book is above my pay grade. Yeah, it's not. I can't do that. That would be way too complicated. I can talk about it here because I don't have to footnote or cite anything. But like, man, that is like, okay. Bob says, other than the climate changing, what other aspects of the world's geopolitics and economic systems will experience a possibility of collapse due to the climate evolution? Well, man, Wow, damn. Well, I think the whole economy is going to have to shift. You think about some of the nations that are going to most be hurt by this. That are really going to most that already are just being devastated, and that affects. Like, just think about Africa, right? That has such an impact. Man,
Right. That has such an impact.
yeah. I just think, man, when you study, okay, when at any one moment, if you look at what's happening in Africa, like sort of the big movements that are happening in Africa, the droughts, right now flooding taking place.
Okay.
Man,
So
it
droughts and
just
flooding.
yeah, just like whatever it is, wars. It's just one after another, right?
Right.
So much of the changes that are taking place to human populations are being caused by changing in the climate, and the change in the climate impacts the economic system and it impacts political systems. And I think that the climate is sort of the thing upon which everything rests. And so who knows where that kind of different layers of collapse that could happen. Like we, even in the US, we feel like, okay, we're in pretty solid ground. I mean, obviously we have the world's strongest economy, right? But what happens when in Florida and in California, the insurance companies aren't insuring anybody? Like, what happens? Because at some point in time, they're not. The insurance companies are pulling out of California because of fires, and they're pulling out of Florida. And like, okay, so what happens to the economy in these states, but not just in these states, across the whole country? Like, who's gonna pay for this? Who's gonna take care of it? Because this is just incredible amount of money. And so who anyway, so when I think Bob the artist, when I think about your question, I think this is like the collapse of the insurance industry, for one. Like home insurance industry. There's like, man, this is serious. People are, and like what all these other insurance companies have moved in to Florida, let's say, right, as the major ones that they have capitalization that they can really they can back up the claims if in a major disaster that's going to cost like $30 billion, right? Well, they can back that up, but these other insurance companies don't have that. So people are buying in. They've started, and I was reading this long article in the Wall Street Journal about all of these homeowners in Florida that bought into. They had to buy all these the insurance from these other companies, but the companies have no capital. They can't support when these claims come through, which is what's going to happen in the next months. They can't. They're not companies that have any value. So yeah. Anyway,
would you say you expressed that? Was that like a general expression, or like, is there a way that you'd be like, for those that don't know as much about, I'm not sure who's listening or who will listen that may not understand like the process, like the trickle down process of like the insurance companies like collapsing? Would you be able to like break that down in terms of like how that will have impact on eventually like civilians and like does that make sense? Do you think that's something that you need to get into?
Yeah.
Because I think you said it, but
yeah.
it was also like,
Well, I think that sometimes we look. First off, I don't like to catastrophize, right? I really don't. I tend to not want to do that. Okay.
Right.
And even with climate change, I'm like, yeah, you know what? We're going to beat this back a little bit. And we may be able to, we don't know how quickly, things will bounce back. Like we don't know how quickly the system itself could just spiral out of control very fast, but the system itself could go in the other direction very fast. So it may not take a lot, but it's looking, however, as though like, oh man, we're not moving fast enough. And probably it's looking like we're probably not moving fast enough, but who knows? We might be able to.
What's not moving fast enough?
We're not reducing the CO2 that we're putting up in the atmosphere fast enough. Yeah, we're just not. It's not. We can't do it. Well, we're not doing it. We just can't. It requires such a concerted effort by the largest nations of the world and by people.
Right.
You remember when in class yesterday, this guy Lucas, he said, we just have to be willing to not consume so much. And I said, hey man, look out at all these people out here and tell them that not to consume so much. You don't want a car. You don't want to graduate and get a car and a house and travel all over the world and have all these things. Like, you really don't want to do that. You really want to not have any of that. And you're going to need to not have that. Well, that's just not going to fly. That's just not, this is a problem. So anyway,
that's wow.
Wait, so the question was,
okay.
So going back to, yeah. So going back to just something like the insurance system. Yeah, got it. The U.S. can only win, and just in this economy, we can only prop up so many things. You know what I mean? We propped up the whole country for a year and a half under COVID. And now we have this incredible debt that is just beyond anything anyone can imagine. And you can say at some level it's artificial, because maybe it is. I don't know how you think about that, but you can only prop up so many things, man. And how many resources do we have to rebuild all of the things that need to be rebuilt from the last hurricane? And then we got this one. It's like, we aren't that many resources in the world, man. If everybody is doing the same thing, it's just incomprehensible. So that's part of the collapse, I think, is the issue that we have to be thinking about.
You said if everybody is doing the same thing. Same.
Well,
I might be beating the dead horse.
No, hang on. Dexter's Lure Lab. No, in the 90s, we did have the ozone hole, and the ozone hole was real. And we made very concerted efforts to address the ozone hole. We got rid of fluorocarbons. We just really made a very concerted effort to say, we got to fix this. And it's either coincidence or it's a direct causation. It might just be a correlative coincidence that we started making all of these changes here on, human beings on Earth, and phasing out all the things that were really creating the destroying the ozone, and then it started to move back in the other direction. Now people in the traveling around the Earth and the space shuttle are saying, like, yeah, we did, well, and Bob the artist, maybe also another thing that people are saying is that, well, some of the other things that are happening actually kind of help to repair the ozone. But the point being, like, these systems are incredibly complicated, so I don't know. For me, it's like the national debt is a myth. Yeah, well, right. This is what I said, Eric. We have we have I mean, there's a level at which, okay, just wipe it clean and start over. But the problem with that is it just, it's just like the insurance. Everything is built on something else. Everything is built on something else. Man, it's such a complicated system. So I don't know. Okay. Do you have another question from class?
So Axel from Germany asked on the YouTube live stream chat, what type of
Yeah.
collapse are we talking about when it comes to
Yeah.
climate change?
I think the
you went
collapse.
over that briefly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, what the climate people are saying is like, all of these, the natural environment, whether it's the oceans or the forests or whatever it is, the atmosphere, whatever it is, right? Everything is connected to everything else. And, one thing starts to fall apart and the next thing falls apart and the next thing and the next thing. I mean, it's just incredibly, it's an ecosystem that is interconnected in profound ways. So you can't. So the collapse idea is the idea that that the ecosystem, a piece of it, starts to fold, and we, like right now, for example, the oceans and the Gulf are warmer than they say like they've ever been. I mean, the level of warmth is okay. So now you got the hurricane, and the hurricane comes through, and then it cycles back around to another piece of it, right? It adds another layer of change, and the other layer of change affects something else, and so it just keeps going on and on. And I think that's the nature of system collapse, or system change, that changes in a way that is changing too fast, that the system can't right itself. It's like when you're getting ready to fall off a bike or something, or whatever it is that you're on, and like if it's just a little bit, you can kind of right yourself back. But if you go too far, you can't do that. And like spinning a top, sometimes I spin a top. You ever watch it? And then the top will start to be a little wobbly, and then it's fine wobbly, and then something happens. Maybe it hits something on the table, and then it just gets more wobbly, and it can't rewrite itself. And then there you go. So anyway,
And that's the analogy of like the global ecosystem.
Yeah, that it just can't. We're not going to be able to. We're not going to allow it to. No. Okay. All right, let's go.
Okay.
What do you got?
Mm-hmm.
No, what's the most pressing issue with climate change? How do you make the biggest impact?
Oh, you know what makes me want to ask you along with that question?
Yeah.
Is just I was thinking about how like problems just seem to be, I don't know, I'm ignorant, but like seem to be like political, and then they're stuck in like the realm of ideas.
Yeah.
rather than in,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
realm of action, and then it just is the binary between like true and false, so like right and wrong, and then it's just like this realm of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
and so
Yeah. Huh. Yeah,
I don't know.
No, that's an interesting point. For me, okay, so if you think about this, the most pressing issue with climate change, I actually think probably the most pressing issue is going to give rise to social instability. That because you're going to see all of these places around the world, which are already seen, by the way. I mean, we're already, the level at which
Can you give
change in
examples?
climate. Yeah, well, all everything in like in the Middle East, the whole, when you think about, Syria, like the main rise of ISIS and ISIL, right, and the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, right. When you think about that, largely started in Syria, and that started largely because of a drought that the people who are studying droughts in that area of the world is like, yeah, we'd never seen a drought like this before. And so people were putting demands on the Assad government that were just the Assad government just responded with violence and force, and then it just spiraled from there, and then it just moves from here to there to here to there, and then before we know it, it's just like a massive meltdown. And I think
so what was the
go ahead. Yeah.
What was the domino effect?
Well, it starts with the drought
on the government.
Yeah, so it sends all the people into the cities, man, and it sends all the people into the main cities in Syria, and the people are demanding help, right? Because people were, I think it was like 1 million people migrating into the cities, and so we see a similar thing in Southeast Asia. We're seeing it in lots of different places, and I think probably social instability is going to come with climate, these really pretty serious changes in the climate. Yeah.
And this is the panic you're talking about.
Yeah, it's kind of the panic. Well, it's not just panic, it's trying to survive.
But survival, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. People trying to survive. And then of course the panic. And then the other people are saying like, hey, we can't help them. Like how many, it's fine people know people in Florida and be like, okay, well, you've lost everything in Florida, so come back to Ohio or come back to Pennsylvania or come back, whatever. But you've got, like what are we looking at here? Really, the city of Miami, when there's heavy rains, the city of Miami, the sewage system can't in any way deal with it. I mean, it's just a constant flooding. It's just, you look at these maps of Florida where it's going to be in 20 years, and like the whole, the coastline, it's like the sea level is right. It's just, there's just a level of social unrest and panic and instability. I think that's the biggest problem. And we won't be able to survive because we're just going to pit ourselves against one another. Yeah. So anyway, that's my take. That's my take on it.
Right. Just like civil unrest.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
Do you think about this? Americans like to talk about climate change, but not really doing anything, despite being one of the biggest consumers of resources. Well,
that's like kind of like the almost related to what I offered, slightly, just like in the realm of ideas, but then instead of the realm of action.
Yeah, I like that. This is actually a good question. I would have liked to answer this yesterday. I think that I actually think that most Americans don't talk much about climate change, at least not in a serious way. We're not talking about it. And I think that probably Americans, we are taught or told by a lot of politicians, certain media folks to question the validity or existence of climate change. And we want to hear that. Like, I want to believe anybody who says climate change isn't real, don't be fooled by them. I want to believe them. Of course I do. Like, I don't want to think about that nonsense, right? So it doesn't take a lot to convince people to not pay attention to it. Especially when you have a very large number of people who are here who are truly not paying attention, and they don't, understand, which is, I don't know, like the science. I don't want to use science as though it's some special thing, but yeah, they want to believe that it's not true. Okay. So we're not doing anything. Yeah. All right. Because we come up with a reason for that. Well, other people aren't doing anything. So I'm not going to do anything. And so, but we would, like, Americans, the one thing about Americans, I think there are several things, but Lori says this all the time, that we're like a can-do people, man. Like, we can do it. We can fix it. Let's go. Let's dig in and let's make it happen. Let's fix it. So that's a cool side of the U.S. Like, yeah, okay, it's broke. Doesn't matter. We'll take care of it. It's also a really big part of white people too, man. White Americans. It's like such a mentality, that I really appreciate. Yeah. Lori says
What,
this all
so
the time, man.
okay, so I was gonna say, so you like believe in that statement? Like, oh, Americans are can-do people.
Well, they not necessarily that they'll do it effectively, but the idea is like, yeah, we can fix this. Let's go. Let's fix it, man. Let's jump in. And
Mm,
but
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, but that's
And
the thing. Yeah.
so you're like the Americans like to talk about it, but you're like Americans don't like to talk about it about climate change, but then they're
Well,
can-do people. What do you think the
to,
relationship?
no one wants to talk about it.
Right.
No one wants to talk about anything that's connected to their existence and the
Right.
potential, that kind of thing. Like no one wants to do that. Like I don't want to do
Right.
that, you know. So
So it's just like all cognitive dissonance. So like
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a whole bunch of like ways to avoid it, to
Yeah,
dismiss
exactly. It's
thinking
all about
about it.
avoiding, man. Yeah. So I don't think Americans are any different than anybody else,
Right.
but one thing that we have is we have a big segment of the power base, not the power base here, because the conservatives who are the vast majority of conservatives who are part of business and government are quite well versed in climate issues and are believers in it. And they know that okay, this is real. We got to work on this. We got to take care of it. But you've got enough that are not, or that are seeing that they can garner an exceptional amount of power by pushing forward an anti-climate change narrative, and that American people are like people everywhere, and they don't want to believe it because, of course, we don't want to believe it, and so they can bring these people onto their side and they can use them for political purposes. So we have that in the U.S. Yeah, we have that in the U.S.
I was like wondering, like, how much do you think, like, the relationship between like incoming young workers and like that the relationship with like corporate America like impacts the way that like change happens? Because what I noticed is like how like Fortune 500 companies like brand themselves as like progressive or forward or like for talent, like for incoming talent that's coming out of university that have like these forward thinking values of like making an impact on the world. And I guess I was like, I wonder how much does that maybe make an impact on the future
Well,
of.
I think it's important, and I think you have to start with the message. You can't, first off, understand that in the end, if you're an organization or business, you need to be able to pay your bills. So whether I'm selling blue jeans or I'm selling, an organization that sells parental rights, to support parental rights, right? In divorce agreements, let's say, I don't know why I came up with that, but like I need to hire people to work for me, and I want to support, get my message out there to people, right? Well, I need money, got to pay people. And if I'm selling blue jeans or automobiles or mufflers, right, I need money. I got to pay for stuff. So like the idea that an organization, that a business will come through and like greenwash, and that's a problem because they say these things, but then look, they do these things over here, right? It's like, well, yeah, but you gotta, I mean, I'm selling blue jeans, you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna pollute at some level, right? I have the dyes in the jeans, there's cotton, there's all the problems with the cotton and the cotton farming, as you go down the chain, right? Slavery connected to cotton and pesticides and cotton and children, it's like, oh, you're not an acceptable company because look, you're not living up to your message. So it's like, well, no, look, this is the message. I'm going to go as far as I can. And sometimes I'm really going to be very hypocritical, but sometimes, it's like, maybe we'll get there, but let's start with the message. And then, so then you got young people like yourself, who you get involved in these, you get hired by these companies, and you start questioning it. It's like, wait a minute, hang on a second.
Right.
Yeah, I know you're selling jeans, and you have these dyes, and the dyes are going into the water, and it's like, okay, you're cleaning the water before it goes back into the sewage system, that kind of treating it, but you're not treating it for these two chemicals over here. It's like, oh, all right. But
Wow.
you need to be putting pressures on folks, right? That's kind of the nature of it. So
Who's putting pressure on who?
well, the young employees, younger people got to put
Or
pressure
putting
on
pressure on the.
Yeah, that's the good
Right.
thing. But let's just not turn around and throw everything out, because there's
Right.
some kind of
Or just call
it's-
them
yeah.
liars or.
Yeah,
No,
same
you're
with
not.
climate. Yeah, same with climate. You're just like, look, maybe like people, maybe a company or an organization that doesn't go as far as we want it to go, but the organization in the end's you got to make money.
Right.
You do have that. We're in this big system that requires certain things. So
Wow.
this is what I mean. Like let's like not just put it, like throw everything out.
Yeah.
I think it has value. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Again, it comes back. It sounds like it comes back again to like just seeing side, like the young people are seeing this side, the corporations are seeing this side, and then
Yeah.
the young people don't want to see the complexity of like corporations trying to find the bottom line, and
Yeah. Yeah. Like you got a job for the company, but then you want to raise, it's like, okay, well, where's your raise going to come from? Because they're going to implement
Right.
all these changes over here that you want to see to protect the environment, but yet you still want to raise. It's like, well, where's it all going to happen? Like,
Right.
so this is the
Yeah.
thing. Like we all have to be thoughtful about these things. That's why the left
Right.
misses a lot. And why, the right misses a lot too. But this is one way in which I think the left misses a lot.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
crazy. Like, how do we get like in that relationship for embracing complexity to happen, So it's like the complexity of just I don't know, the needs of both
Yeah.
sides, and that's
Yeah. I got
interesting.
you. I got you.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Go ahead,
Huh.
Jeff. You got another
Interesting.
one? Yeah. No, don't know is a temporal discussion that doesn't include professional project. Yeah. Huh. Yeah.
Hold on 1 second, because he texted me a little bit more.
All right. Yeah.
Dr. Sam
Yeah.
referring to an alternative model that suggests current weather is just within its variant boundaries. So are we really within like our normal bounds of what we should expect for the weather, or is it actually crazier now?
I think what we're showing, what people are showing, whatever they look at, people are showing that we're going outside the normal boundaries increasingly. It's like, look, the hottest years on record, right? 9 of the 10 hottest years are in the past 13 years or something like that. I mean, this kind of stuff, whatever we look at, these, folks are just showing like, wow, we're way out of the boundaries, And look, but part of it, every time there's a forest fire anywhere, it's front page news, right? Anytime there's any kind of a storm or any kind of a drought or it's front page news, because that we've sort of locked into this idea of climate change. So we have to be really careful to not just read the headlines and be like, oh my God, every time I open the paper, it's some climate disaster. It's like, well, hang on, there've been climate disasters forever. Right? Like like we're reporting on this stuff now more than we were 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So that's very, very important. And it's also really important that just because yesterday I used the headline from a sheriff in Tampa, and the sheriff in Tampa says, this is going to be a catastrophe. I'm like, dude, you're a sheriff in Tampa. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is the biggest hurricane we've ever had. It's going to be a catastrophe. It's like, hang on, I get that, but you're the sheriff of Tampa. Okay. So let me be thinking critically, like here, well, hang on, just because the sheriff of Tampa says this about this hurricane doesn't mean it's true about the hurricane, right? So you got to be really careful about these kinds of things, right? The extremes beyond the normal projected outcomes, right?
So you're saying like the influence of power dynamic doesn't automatically conclude like the rightness or wrongness of what
Yeah,
someone is
exactly. So
saying.
yeah, but and then you gotta be like, I'll look at one of these graphs and I'll say like, and the graph will show here. I'm gonna do this on the stream. Hang on, right here. The graph will be like, so here's the mean, right? Imagine the mean is right along here, right? And then it's like, whoa, way up here, and then way down here, and then way up here, and way down here, and then I'll be like, okay, well, hang on, well, what's the unit of analysis here, and here, and here, right? What are they looking at? It's so they're looking at, say, temperature, right? Average temperatures for this kind of year, and you see, it's like, whoa, it should be within right here. This is where it should be, right in this line. But what we're seeing is like it's way above the line, and then it's down, and then it's like way above the line, and then down, and way above the line. And so the way they draw the graph makes it appear like, holy smokes, this is out of control. But then I look, well, what's the unit of analysis between here and here and here and here? You see that, right? And I'm like, well, it's 0.01, degrees. And I'm like, whoa, hang on a second. That's like 1/100th of a degree. Like, no wonder it's like going like this. You know what I mean? So you got to be like, okay, that's not right. Like that, you have to always be thinking critically about everything. Does that make sense to you, what I just said? Right?
It brought me, because I mean, there was a question that popped up from cognitive dissonance, and are you relating it to, I'm going to summarize.
I wasn't
the
relating
question
it
that he
to
asked.
cognitive dissonance. I was just really relating it to being critical of like being carefully thinking about these kinds
That's
of
a
things.
user in the chat's
Right.
name.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Cognitive.
Yeah.
Sorry
Oh,
about
okay.
that.
Thank you.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So when he, no, I get it. Yeah, that would have been great. I get, no. I get what you're saying. I'm like, isn't that cognitive dissonance, Sam?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well,
What
it
you
is
just said?
cognitive
No,
dissonance
I'm
also in
playing.
a way. Yeah.
I guess explanation. I
Yeah.
think they say
Yeah.
explanation
For
as a
sure.
whole. Cognitive,
Yeah.
right. But the question was, do you notice that the hotter and drier our land gets, we are getting more
Yeah.
storms and stuff that potentially drops ton of fresh water and fill up our rivers and reservoirs? Isn't that part of the cycle? So were you relating
Yeah.
like that, even though it seems like an outlier, it may just be a part of
The way
like
they're
the day?
the unit of measurement that they're using, right? So if I'm looking at,
Right.
like when I see one of these graphs of temperature, right? And I think, oh,
Mhm.
they're looking at like every half degree, like
Mhm.
every it's half degrees. So I'm like, oh man, my God, we're way above what's the normal temperature is, right?
Right.
But or it's 1 degree, like, whoa, we're like, it looks like we're like 3 degrees above and 3 degrees below and but it's actually, no, we're like, a tenth of a degree. It's like, okay, hang on a
Right.
second, man. And
Right.
sometimes
Right.
people don't do
It's
that consciously. They're not trying to lie to convince people. It's just like, well, that's what they put together, like,
right.
so you just have to be like, we have to, yeah, you just have to be really careful about it.
You have to put the data
Yeah, the
in
data. Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
Put it in
And
perspective.
I have had to teach myself that because if I don't want to get called out on it, like, God,
Right.
like, I don't want to use a graph. It's just like, oh, look at these, look at how this is, it's like, no, my God. So I'm trying to be really
Right.
careful. Yeah.
Right. And you're just saying like the science, you have to get closer and closer to the
Yeah.
truth, and whatever that
Yeah.
means is you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to pay attention to everything. It's
Yeah. Yeah. I got you.
big
Yep.
detail.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's really
This is a tough
difficult.
conversation, climate. I'm
Dude,
not.
it's a really hard conversation, man. It's a hard one to sit through.
Yeah.
And
It-
I watch, yesterday I was watching a video, or a couple days ago, about it was a critique of the hockey stick. The hockey stick is Michael Mann's idea, right? The hockey stick is pretty basic, right? It's sort of like at the moment that we started putting exceptional amounts of CO2 in the air in the late 19th century, we see the temperature start to rise. So the two, they go together. It's like CO2, temperature, it rises.
Right.
And so if you look over the period of history, it looks like this, and this looks like a hockey stick. Whoop. Right? It's like, oh, okay, that's where that idea comes from. So this person was critiquing the hockey stick, right? And he was kind of a young guy. Looked like he was maybe like 25 or 30, which doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like you can be young and you can have a very strong critique. And sometimes, the younger thinkers have the best critiques, right? Because you're coming at something with fresh eyes. Right. And then I was reading there you go, man, right there. Yeah. And you can see how, the temperature goes up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so then I was reading all the comments to this, and people were throwing all these really just throwing ideas around. And we got to think about this, and you got to think about that, and all over the place, right?
They were critiquing his critique.
Yeah, no, they were critiquing the hockey stick thing. They were agreeing with him, and I was like, well, wait a minute. So there were some things that I'm like, well, you sound really smart, like because you're using these big words.
Right.
But then I just took some time to really think through, well, hang on, what are you actually saying? And then I think, I'm sure that there were no climate scientists in this chat. Well, it wasn't a live stream, but it was a chat, on the video, right?
Right.
And then I just thought, I don't know, it's like it's very difficult for me. I'm always looking for alternative perspectives. So I was very
right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
All right. So anyway,
you're just trying to navigate around the conclusion. You're like, I'm noticing a conclusion, and
yeah.
there's got to be more to this conclusion.
Yeah, you gotta figure out. You haven't convinced me that you really understand what's behind the hockey stick thing here. First off, right? And and I'm gonna Dexter's lure lab is that tearing down the system without a better plan is fundamentally self-destructive. Yeah, I would agree with that. It's like it's not necessarily a better plan, but without recognizing the repercussions of tearing down the system.
Sam, what is his response in relation to this hockey stick?
Nah, this is just I'm just seeing that, No, I'm just seeing that with regard to even the like what are we going to do with the when I think about how we're going to even respond to climate, man. We can abandon all of our modes of production but like it's going to be I don't know. Like we got to have something in place, man. And mostly it is happening. We're slowly retooling our entire economic system around new technologies, and we're developing them really fast. And had we started 20 years earlier, then we'd be even further ahead than we are now. We're making some very good, very awesome progress, man. Yeah, really good progress, man. So, it's too bad we didn't start 10 or 20 years earlier when we really had our heads in the sand. But, here we are. We just got to dig in, man. Yeah. So.
Dig in.
Yeah. We just got to keep digging in. Yeah. 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 All right, man. Listen. I think I gotta go. Hey, by the way, I don't know that I'll be able to have office hours next week because I'm gonna be Korea. And I just
that's
don't
right.
think I'll probably have office hours, but they won't be at this class at this time. I'll do something
Okay.
from Korea. I'll hop on. We
Mhm.
might live stream. I actually have a lecture that I'm doing on Monday afternoon, which will be around 3:00, which will be about 2 in the morning on Monday morning. So, you know,
Right.
in Europe,
We're gonna
if you
try and
did-
get Sam to live stream a lot while he's
Yeah.
over in Korea.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to do as much as
cool.
we're gonna try to stream as much as I can, but
Yeah.
last time I did, because
Really
we have a lot of Korean viewers, as soon as I did, we suddenly had, I don't know, like 100 people. I just turned on my phone and started talking. I was talking to a woman from North Korea who's now living in South Korea, and I met her, and so we were having a conversation. And before I knew it, there were like 100 people watching. And then I turned around and there were 500 people watching because it went on a neighbor, which is like kind of a Korean platform. And
That's awesome.
and people started watching, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it Korean audience?
Yeah,
it?
lots and lots of Koreans. Yeah. I
That's
was giving a
cool.
talk.
That's
There's this one Korean YouTuber who live streams on YouTube, and he has like thousands of people who watch him live, and he goes over like current events, but he's not political at all. And I'm really trying to get you on his stream sometime because I think,
Oh, dude.
yeah,
Ask
that'd be
him,
really cool.
Tell him I'll be all right, let him know. Let him know I'll be over there. I'd like to meet him. Yeah. All right. Okay, so listen, y'all, I'll do a mukbang. A mukbang. Yeah, I could do that. That's where you just eat endless amounts of food. I kind of did that. I was on this. There's a stream or a video, a channel is called Awesome Korea. And we record. It's not live stream, but we record over a meal. So like we sit
Oh,
and
that's
eat
cool.
and talk, you know.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. All right, so listen, we're okay. We're good. We have class tomorrow. The Turkish TRT, it's the Turkish television English speaking channel will be in class tomorrow, and so we'll see. It'll be interesting. We're going to talk about the elections with Dr. Mulvey.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so there's gonna be like an international perspective, or at least from the Turkish.
I don't think so.
Or no?
Nah.
Oh.
We'll have some international. No, they're just going to record. They just want to do a couple segments for their channel.
Oh, that's cool.
or
More exposure.
for
That's
the
awesome.
program. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Cool.
All right, man. So, Dexter's Lure Lab. Why did you imply that you're Korean?
I literally didn't. Somebody else asked if that was G-Dog, and then I
G-Dog.
said that G-Dog was actually Korean, which
Yeah.
you know, this person's
Yeah.
Chinese American, so they're very, they're different.
Yeah, different G-Dog, man.
Different G-Dog.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man. Listen, everybody. So we'll head out, and well, some of you, I guess, we'll see tomorrow. Yeah, in class. All right.
Be well.
All right. Be well.